Welcome to Mindfulness of Doom, a weekly podcast about life, peaceful living, and existential dread. You're not lost. Everyone's faking it, and the purpose of life is, enjoy the show.
Last time on Mindfulness of Doom, we heard from World Happiness Festival experts about the nature of happiness and the ironic struggles many of us face while seeking happiness within. In this week's episode, robots. We'll hear about the future of technology and its role in supporting mindfulness and raising global consciousness. You'll hear from Mikey Siegel, founder of Biofluent, as he shares about his invention called group flow and discusses the history of technological development as a reflection of our current state of consciousness. Then, Transformative Technology Lab Executive Director Nichol Bradford opens up about how she's using mobile apps to aid people with depression and make mental health and human flourishing abundant. Finally, you'll hear from Wang-Tsu Liu, founder of a company called Happinss, it's missing the E though, who is using virtual reality to help make mindfulness and meditation go mainstream.
My name is Mikey Siegel, and we're here at the Happiness Festival, and I'm bringing the Group Flow Technology Project, which is an experiment in how technology can connect us to ourselves and each other. And everything I'm up to in the world revolves around this exploration of how modern technology can actually be a force that drives us towards a deeper connection to our own humanity, towards a connection with our hearts, our souls, each other, towards being the best human beings that we can be.
You gave a talk this morning before we started about how technology is sort of a reflection of our current collective consciousness, that we make things that, for example, our current level of technology sort of reflects to us our current level of thoughting, as opposed to our level of feeling or desire to grow personally or spiritually. And you had a very different perspective on technology that I hadn't heard from anybody before. Would you mind sharing about that?
Yeah, sure. First, just the obvious point that, it sounds almost dumb to say, but we built all of this, and it didn't just appear out of thin air, right? Every, the phone that you're holding, the clothes that we're wearing, every man-made object, human-made object around us began as a thought, began as an idea, right? It's an expression of our mind, and that's our mind, right? We build in our image. We create as an expression of who and what we are. And so you can kind of get a sense of what we are on the inside by looking at what do we create on the outside, right? And people that create tools for war are probably fearful and aggressive on the inside. And people that create like fuzzy teddy bears and, or whatever, And so you look at our technology landscape and we live in the information age. And the information age is not just about the way that we exchange and understand and center around information. I think it's also a state of consciousness. It has to do with our addiction to thought and our sense of identity connected to thought. We really believe that we are the thinker in our head, and that is who and what we are. And actually, there was a Harvard study that would ping people randomly throughout the day, and what they found, first of all, was that people are mind-wandering at least 50% of the time. And personally, I think the number is more like 98%.
It must be. I remember how I used to be.
Yeah, but I think that people aren't even aware of the fact that they're mind-wandering. They don't even know what it feels like. But what they found was consistently, no matter what you're doing, if your mind is wandering and you report that your mind is wandering, you're enjoying that thing less. And the title of the study, this was a Harvard study, was "A Wandering Mind is an Unhappy Mind." And that's the world we live in, but it's but the technology landscape we've created is basically reinforcing our wandering mind because we've outsourced our mind wandering, right? Facebook, Twitter, all of these feeds are essentially everyone else's thoughts. We're experiencing the rambling minds of thousands and thousands of people, and we're addicted to that. And there's nothing wrong with that except that it's a recipe for distraction and discontent, because what we're actually doing is we are avoiding ourselves. right? It's a distraction from how we feel.
Yeah. And we hear often from most people that, I wish I wasn't so addicted to my phone, or I can't put this thing down, or I really wish I could be more connected with people. Social media doesn't really do it. But you've seemed to have developed a technology that brings people into a different kind of feeling space, and that this group flow, I don't know what to call it. Is it a machine? Is it a computer? Is it a cluster of sensors?
It's a contraption.
So this group flow contraption that you've set up here at the World Happiness Fest, I had an opportunity to do a demo on Friday night, and I had the most wonderful experience hearing my own heartbeat and seeing it light up in this little light in front of me, and I got to hold it in my hand. And then even better, as we're going through this flow meditation of feeling the beat of our own hearts, we then turned to the partner next to us and handed this pulsing light that was representative of our own heartbeat over to our partner, and we exchanged hearts, and we held each other's hearts for a few moments. And in my experience, what that brought for me was a profound level of trust, and I don't want to say security, but trust, connectedness, and joy. And I felt my heart rate begin to slow, and I felt, and I could see the heart that I was holding in my hand of the person sitting across. It was actually Lewis's mom. I was holding the heart of Lewis's mom. Her heart rate began to regularize. It was irregular at first, and then we gazed into each other's eyes, as everybody did in the room, and it was a remarkable experience. And then something else happened. Ian, who's a member of your team, mixed together everybody's heartbeats and began to play them together like a DJ would. And there was this wonderful symphony of everybody's heartbeats playing around the circle, all in a wonderfully orchestrated series of tones. And it was an incredibly moving and powerful experience to share our hearts with one another. And I think what I got from that was that we can never really hide our hearts from anybody else. That our hearts are always open and available for the taking. And I have the ability to take anybody's heart at any time, no matter how closed off they might want to be. The thing is still pumping, and it's sending out a frequency. Where's your head at, man?
I liked hearing your description. You're hired. That's great. I'll put that on our soon-to-be website.
Could you describe the contraption?
Yeah, it's a monstrosity. It's a lot of wires, a lot of cables. We have over 50 audio channels running in parallel, and we're basically measuring the hearts of 24 people. We're pumping out individual sound to each person. They can hear through headphones. We've got individual lighting, custom for each person, so they can see their heartbeat. We've got big speakers, so we can boom people's heartbeat through the whole room at certain times.
And then you record the heart rates and the music afterwards, do you not?
Yeah, everything's recorded, and we also have the ability to do breath. So we can do all kinds of experiments with breath. We can use the brain also and have people synchronizing their brain waves. We can do galvanic skin response, which is emotional arousal. So what we really have is this flexible platform where we can construct connective experiences using our physiology, right? And the idea here really is how can you use the physiology as an anchor to connect people to themselves and to each other, and this might sound familiar to anyone that's ever meditated.
Yeah.
Because the classic meditation technique of paying attention to your breath is no different. We're just leveraging modern tech as just another way to direct human attention.
Where do you see this project going?
The vision is to really understand the role of technology in what I would call transpersonal human connection. And by transpersonal, I mean that normally when we meet someone, we're sort of like at the meeting them at the level where we're different. Yeah. You know, like this is your political views, my political views, where are you from, what's the color of your skin? We have all these ways of establishing difference. But the further down you get, like we all have a beating heart, you know, we're all breathing, we all love, you know, we all have similar emotions, but you keep going down and down and down, and who and what we are becomes increasingly similar, right? We're all awareness at a fundamental level. We're all conscious, right? We all have love in our fundamental nature. You know, we're all this kind of evolutionary force of the universe kind of doing whatever it's doing, right? And so the more we can relate at that level, the more it's really impossible to hate each other. You know, and every conflict that's ever existed has come from the level at which we're different. And so the goal of the project is to bring 1 billion people around the world at the same time using technology into that sense of transpersonal connection.
I can imagine 1 billion people on the planet walking around wearing sensors connect to the same central processor that is collecting and calculating and analyzing and creating some massive global work of art that anybody can tune into and experience at any moment. And imagine if that was something that, dare I say it, in the mornings children listen to instead of the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm usually the one who receives these comments, but it's I'll just name it that there's a utopic aspect of this and a dystopic aspect of this, right? Because I'm never the one to say this. So it's
what
funny.
Could go wrong?
Yeah, it's like, you know, because you can imagine the sort of like obey, you know, the way of bringing people as a means of control. Yeah. Right, and I want to just call that out, that is a real possibility, you know, that people do have a desire to do that, and technology can serve that function, and that's not my intention. You know, my intention is for maximum collective freedom and connectedness. And so the question comes, well, how do you navigate that? Yeah. Right? How do you make the good guys win, you know? And the best answer I could come up with for that is you got to sharpen your edge of the sword. You know, if it's a double-edged sword, like every tool is, you got to sharpen your edge of the sword, and you do that through the depth and clarity of your intention, right? And that means that for me, this process of creating tools and technologies, or if you're an entrepreneur or you're a maker or you're a seamstress or you're a painter or you're a musician, whatever the hell you're doing, that is your spiritual path in a sense, right? Because like we started the conversation by saying, you are what you build and you build what you are. Right? And so if you want to create things that support transformation, then it needs to, as much as possible, arise from a transformed experience.
Yeah. Mikey, thank you so much for sharing with us.
You got it. Thank you.
My name is Nichol Bradford, and I'm here at the World Happiness Fest because I believe in happiness. I'm really passionate about supporting people, supporting them with mental health, emotional well-being, and human thriving. And I feel a very strong sense of purpose, and I'm really clear about what I'm doing on the planet and why I'm here, and how to use technology to make what is scarce abundant. And for me, I want to make mental health, emotional well-being, and human flourishing abundant.
The topic of mental health and well-being, it tends to be stigmatized in terms of anxiety disorders, bipolar disorders. To find out that we have any of these things, or to know somebody that has these things, societally, I have experienced that it's not something that people feel comfortable talking about. And I can see the potential that technology can have to scale up the level to which we have the conversation and get the discomfort out of the way. What are you up to in that regard?
There's two parts to your question. One is, what about the stigma? I think the stigma is changing because people are starting to realize how widespread it is. You know, in the U.S., there is what's being called diseases of despair. that are like moving into real economic cost for companies and cities and states. And so, people are realizing that it's like very real thing and that it affects everyone. In addition, there's a lot of very high profile people that are coming out and starting to be honest about the challenges that they've had in life. And I think that's fantastic. That is a fantastic use of celebrity. One of the people that I work with, I've been on the board of Brandon Marshall. He's an NFL football player, and he has committed his football career to eradicating the stigma around mental health and seeking mental health treatments. In addition, 2 weeks ago, Kevin Love, who's a major basketball player, just came out and said that he was dealing with depression. So in the last few years, people are starting to become more willing to talk about when they're having an issue, and that just makes it easier to address the stigma. But even stigma aside, there's the issue of having people have access to treatment and tools, and having things that are affordable and accessible. One of my favorite products is a product called Ginger.io, and Ginger.io is for depression, or at least that was their initial use case. And so they do a couple of interesting things. One, you do get to connect it to a real professional, a real therapist, and you do it through your app, and you're talking to them like you would talk to someone on Skype or WhatsApp or whatever. In addition, they do a great deal of pattern recognition, pattern tracking. So with your permission, they establish a baseline of behavior on how you use your phone. What time you wake up, what time you go to sleep, which is determined by first touch, last touch, and a bunch of other things like how often are you using certain apps and that kind of thing. One of the things to keep in mind is that if you have a problem with depression and you're very serious about not having that problem, you are willing to give permission to be monitored in such a way. And so what Ginger.io does is that once you move away from your baseline, if you move away from the baseline that they've established for you, your support network is notified. So the first thing the app does is it pings you and says what's going on and starts to check in with you. Very simple text-based stuff. The second thing that happens is your therapist is notified. Suddenly it's, you've been up, like you're not sleeping more than 3 or 4 hours, or a variety of things. And the third thing that happens is your family, with your permission, is notified. So the people who love you can actually come over and help you and to check in. And so that is a really good example of how technology can support someone with, an actual condition. And it doesn't have to be, one of the things that people don't realize is that, depression comes in a lot of flavors. And the truth of the matter is that we don't actually understand depression, really. And so one of the other things that technology is starting to do is to help us get a little bit more precision about different types of depression and how it shows up and that sort of thing. And also people are starting to question, how we define it right now, because it's a really big bucket the way it's defined. And so one of the things that technology allows is great levels of personalization. So my depression and your depression may not be the same thing at all. And so technology allows us to have different treatments that are completely personalized to us.
What was it like earlier in your life? What challenges did you face that kind of brought you to this point that you are now working on these technological advances?
Mm-hmm. I'm a recovering perfectionist. Meditation helped me with that. But, I've always been really attracted to excellence, and have always been the sort of person that pushed myself mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. My idea of fun is a meditation retreat or like going on something and learning something new. And so, I'm very much wired like that. And so what I love about what we're doing and, about really sort of addressing the human mind, because one of the things about the human mind is that the human mind is a universal human condition. Everyone's got that challenge. And so, I, on one side, on my interest in mental health, there was someone who was very dear to me who had something traumatic happen to them, and they did not get the support that they needed, and it affected their entire life. On the other hand, I believe that as humans, we haven't even begun to max out what we're capable of, like our mental and emotional capacity. And so I'm not a transhumanist at all. I'm not interested personally in uploading my consciousness to a computer. And I think it's a little premature because, what we're walking around in right now, our bodies and our minds, we haven't even begun to reach what our potential is with that. A good example would be like the 4-minute mile. Before that happened, no one did it. And what was amazing about the 4-minute mile was not that it wasn't the first one. Like, that was great, Sir Roger Bannister, that he did it. It wasn't the first one. It was the 72 days after, when almost every day someone in the world broke the 4-minute mile because they had heard that it was possible. And so I think the same is true for, the rest of our humanity. And so, what influenced me to be in this space is just this fundamental belief in the potential of the human race, a fundamental commitment to, my fellow human beings, and a desire that we all get there together.
I think that part is important, is that we all go together, that the health of any one individual relies on the health and success of the whole. You mentioned this morning that you had a background developing video games. What was that like for you?
I loved games. I love the games industry. I had a, when I was working in core video games, I had a fantastic career. And I, had the extraordinary experience of being involved in a very critical way in probably one of the most industry-defining events in the U.S. or in the Western game market, and also one of the most industry-defining events in the Asian game market. So I've had an amazing career, and I loved games. I loved everything about games. I still love games. I think that, and I would still be in games if I hadn't gone on that meditation retreat. So anybody listening, be careful. No, just kidding. I would still be in games, but I actually believe that transformative tech and games are going to come back together. And the reason why is that human beings are story-driven creatures. If you have someone in an fMRI machine and you say, here's the AOP plan for the first quarter of 2019, or you say, once upon a time, the brain lights up at once upon a time, no matter what language it's in, because we spent the bulk of our evolution to what we call modern society was sitting around fires or telling our stories, from generation to generation. So we love a good story, and, games are an evolution of human storytelling. And so I think that games and transformation will come back together. And the other thing, it's a lot of the products today look a lot like wearables. And your classic wearable only lasts about 4 months before someone puts it in a drawer and never uses it again. And the only wearables that stick are the wearables where somehow the person who has it has developed a story about their life that involves this wearable. It's a story, and so it's not, no one cares about 10,000 steps, but people really do care about the story that goes on top of that. And often that's tied to community and some other things. So I believe in story, I believe in technology, I believe in humanity, and I think it all goes together.
Nichol, thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Wang-Tsu Liu. I'm Chinese, Mexican, Canadian.
Chinese, Mexican, yes. Canadian.
I'm born in Canada. My dad is Chinese and my mom is Mexican. And I'm here because we have a project called Happinss. And it is basically a virtual reality platform that integrates 3 different experiences: nature destinations, immersive nature destinations, music therapy tracks, and mindfulness guided meditations. And what we're trying to accomplish with this is to help people find a place where they can reset and relax and we're targeting companies right now because we found that there is a niche, that there is a need for people to stop working. We're living in a world where everything's going way too fast. We're hyper connected to everything. We're always waiting for a message, for a tweet, for a like. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to use technology to help people slow down and have a mental break so they can realize what they really want to do and what they're doing so they can have a better work-life balance.
What was your personal journey like that had you start this project?
My personal journey was pretty much like that. I was very stressed. I was actually kind of depressed. My first startup failed after 4 years. And I moved to Canada and I started doing expeditions with a couple of friends. And I found that being immersed in nature helped me to reassess my life and reprioritize my goals. And then, funny enough, we created a project called the Expeditioners on Facebook, and we started getting a ton of likes. Today, that page has more than 200,000 likes, and we found a very peculiar pattern, which was most people that followed had regular jobs, and when they felt stressed and they wanted to get out of their work, they went to our page, and they went to see our pictures and our videos, and they wanted to live through our adventures. And it got me wondering. I wanted to know how I could make a more personal experience, more immersive experience for people. And about 4 years ago, I found virtual reality, and that's how the journey started.
Amazing. And how has this helped people so far? You mentioned that you had brought it to people of Mexico City after the earthquake recently.
Yes. So it's a solution that we tailor to companies, but then we realized that we could use this same product to help people in other places and in other situations. So we've done a couple of pilots. We've gone to a children's home for abused children, and we used it to help the children feel better. And then we had the earthquake last year in Mexico, and we said, let's go to the shelters and bring this to the shelters and see what happens. And then we put this in the hands of people that lost everything, that had no hope, that had no house. Nobody was taking care of them. The government kept all the money, but that's a different story. And then we went and we provided this mental health assistance with virtual reality, and the impact was amazing. People were feeling better. They were thanking us for being there, for giving them 5 minutes of peace and relaxation. And because of these efforts, we know that this product or this technology has a greater social impact.
What do you see as the future for technology in the field of mental health and wellness?
I see a huge role played by technology in mental health. I think we're just starting to hack the brain, and we're going to start to realize that how we think and how we process information, and that's going to open new fields of studies and new levels of consciousness. So I think it's very exciting. Obviously, there is the dark side and the bright side. So
tell me about the dark side.
The dark side could get very dark, but we're trying to focus on the positive side. We're trying to create experiences for positive stimulus to help people get out of those dark places. Actually, my co-founder, his mother had bipolar depression, and that's one of the reasons he wanted to create this product, because he knew that technology and positive stimulus can help you get out of these dark places.
Very good. And have you had your brain hacked?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. With all the tools that we have at our disposal right now, it's kind of scary, because your phone is listening to you, your computer is listening to you, your TV is listening to you. So that's why I like to be camping outside in nature, because there's no technology, there's no connectivity. And that's actually one of the reasons why we're doing it. We're using technology to connect people to nature and to help them get back to basics.
Thank you for sharing that experience with us. And I had an opportunity to put on the headset, and I was sent underwater in the ocean with the fish.
Nice.
And I got to hang out in the coral reefs for a while and listen to a mindful breath meditation. And it was very relaxing. Yeah, I wish you great success in this endeavor and sharing this relaxation tool with more people.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about it.
We don't have any real sponsors yet on Mindfulness of Doom, but we do have real fake sponsors. This episode of Mindfulness of Doom is brought to you by Heart Control. Yes, that's right, Heart Control. It's like mind control, but at a global level, and much, much scarier. This episode of Mindfulness of Doom is also brought to you by playing video games to beat depression. I'm pretty sure that's the opposite of how that works, but if you've got a solution, I'm open to it. Lastly, this episode of Mindfulness of Doom is brought to you by The Dark Side. The Sith are making their comeback, and they're watching your smartphone usage to tailor their brand of evil to your personal tastes. If you enjoyed these latest episodes featuring exclusive content from the 2018 World Happiness Festival, give us a shout out on our Patreon page and consider supporting our podcast so we can make more episodes like this one. Patreon supporters get access to additional content not on the show, including the full MP3 of the Group Flow Heartbeat music mentioned in this episode. Find that and more at patreon.com/mindfulnessofdoom. Thanks for listening to this latest episode of Mindfulness of Doom, and we'll see you next week. We invite you to like, subscribe, and rate our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever. Have suggestions, music, or artwork for the show? Want to sponsor our podcast? Find our contact page and links to the items we talked about in this episode at www.mindfulnessofdoom.com. Become a supporter of our podcast at patreon.com/mindfulnessofdoom and get access to exclusive content that's not on the show.
This podcast is recorded in Miami, Florida. It is written, recorded, and edited by Brian Lemmerman and Corey Hardacre. Our music is provided by Pallet Town and Suitcase Music. They can be found at soundcloud.com/pallettown and at suitcasemusic.bandcamp.com. All poorly thought out opinions are ours. Nothing you hear in this podcast should be construed as professional medical advice. Go see a therapist, all of you.
Have you had your brain hacked?
To be honest, I'm not sure.